What's up guys, we are back and today I'm bringing you some more of my Pokemon armor sets. 3 new designs commissioned by individual clients off of Instagram, and this time I'm going to be introducing my process work for something new that I've been asked to do for 2 of these commissions. But before we get started, I just want to give a big thank you to all of our awesome Patreon supporters. If you'd like to become a patron for this channel, please consider checking us out on Patreon. Any amount helps, you guys are awesome. One last thing before we dive in, be sure to check out the other videos in my Pokemon Armor series. I answer a lot of frequently asked questions about my work, but just in case you haven't watched them yet, I'll go through some of the biggest questions right now. I work in a program called Procreate. It's an app for the iPad. It's super intuitive and very affordable. I highly recommend it to anyone just breaking into digital artwork. The models you see me drawing over are posed by me in an app called ArtPose. There's a male and female edition, and I recommend both for anyone who doesn't have 24/7 access to nude human models. I would also like to advise any artist not completely familiar with human anatomy to not trace over the models like I do in these videos. Without an internalized understanding about how the human body works, tracing characters will end up looking awkward and uninformed. Learn human anatomy from real humans, not from apps like ArtPose. They're good models, but not great for teaching anatomy. These pieces were all commissioned by individuals who contacted me through my Instagram. I'll link my page here. I take on about 5 to 7 commissions every 2 weeks or so, and it's often first come, first serve. If you'd like to commission a set for yourself, be sure to follow me on Instagram for updates on my availability and prices. Hopefully that answers the majority of people's questions, at least based off of the comments on my previous videos. And now we're ready to get started. Please enjoy the process and commentary for my 3 most recent Pokemon armor designs, and the new bonus I'll be throwing in for 2 of them. One of the most interesting challenges when I get commissioned to do these sets is turning a Pokemon design that I'm not personally a fan of into an armor design that I can be proud of. This was the first thought that came into my head when I was commissioned to do a set based off of Zama Zenta, one of the new legendaries from Sword and Shield. Gen 8 introduced a lot of new amazing Pokemon designs, but the legendaries didn't really resonate with me. Of course, personal bias needed to be thrown out the window in this case. I can't turn down a commission just because I don't like the Pokemon. The client had a specific vision for this design and described to me with examples where they wanted me to go with it. They sent me a few pictures of a character called Wargreymon, one of the more well-known Digimon, with an iconic segmented shield. The client specifically requested that my design incorporate some manner of arm-mounted 2-part shield that could merge into one giant shield when the character's arms were held together. Frankly, it was a really cool idea, and it got me excited about the design, despite the fact that I'm not really a fan of Zama Zenta. I had a concept to base the whole idea around. Now, I needed to convert recognizable features of the Pokemon into a cohesive anthropomorphized design. My reference images that I use for each of these designs varies depending on the core concept and point of inspiration, and for this one, my main references were pre-existing character designs like Wargreymon and other pop culture characters like Transformers or Power Rangers. Nothing exactly like what the client requested to be the main premise of this design exists in any part of human history, so I wanted this character to have more of a modern feel, rather than something like a historically accurate reinterpretation. Another thing I considered in making this decision was the colors of the Pokemon, which, as it turns out, is another reason why I'm not crazy about Zama Zenta. The oversaturated primary color scheme of red, blue, and yellow gives the whole look a very Saturday morning cartoon vibe, and so a design inspired by characters in that genre seemed appropriate. In the end, I was very happy with how this turned out. It's not something I would have ever drawn on my own, and it's important for artists to be forced out of their comfort zones every now and then. And speaking of forcing myself to do things that I normally don't, there was an added level of complication to this design. One of my commission tiers is a Pokemon armor set with a 2-point turnaround, as a lot of my designs are requested for cosplayers. So for this design, I couldn't just fudge a lot of the details that could be overlooked if the character was only drawn in one pose. I had to consider the design in a pseudo 3D space, and it's not an easy thing to do, especially for an artist like me, who tends to over-design the hell out of things like this without thinking about how each part of the design would actually work if the character was created to exist in 3 dimensions. Again, it was a great exercise for me in discipline and critical thinking, and forced me to work in ways that I don't normally do. Now, on this second design, I got to work with a Pokemon I actually like quite a bit. I have this kind of secret list of Pokemon that I really hope people will commission me to do, and Kapha Grivas has been on there for a long time. Growing up, I had a deep interest in ancient Egypt, and to this day I still love designs based off of or inspired by the artwork, culture, and mythology of the time. The client who commissioned this design had no specific requests for how they wanted it to look, in contrast to the Zama Zenta armor set, so I had free range to come up with a design of my own. I often start the design by posing my model in art pose, and I usually don't go too crazy with it. But this time I wanted to inject the design with a little bit more personality, so I posed my model like a Silent Hill enemy. I wanted to really lean into this cursed pharaoh mummy vibe, but more than just that, I wanted to capture that malevolent, mischievous, and scheming look that Kapha Grivas has. Now, aside from being based off of a sarcophagus, Kapha Grivas really isn't anthropomorphized at all. I needed a way to turn a box with arms into a human, while still retaining enough of what makes the Pokemon recognizable. After looking at some ancient Egyptian artifacts and Kapha Grivas, I decided that the most iconic part of its design is its face, with its uniquely shaped eyes and its sinister grin. Its crown could easily be transformed into, well, just that, with the signature little mask emblem that's iconic to its evolutionary line. The rest of the body I kinda went wide with. I dressed up the character in all sorts of ancient Egyptian garments not really found on Kapha Grivas, but that still fit the theme. I contemplated giving the design 4 spectral arms like the Pokemon has, but instead of being that on the nose, I decided to animate the bandages that were wrapped around the character into 4 tendrils that shot from the back. This has got to be one of my favorite, if not my absolute favorite armor set I've done recently, and I was so happy with not only my concept, but my execution, particularly the colors and the values. I'm going to try in the future to start off my models in more expressive poses. I think it lends itself to more exciting designs. This commission, like Zama Zenta, was also the 2-point turnaround. However, Kapha Grivas' design is slightly less complicated than Zama Zenta's, so the turnaround was a little bit easier for me. It was, however, a good example of how a turnaround could inform a viewer of an additional detail that couldn't be seen from just one angle, as I included the palm leaf decal that the Pokemon sports on the back of its sarcophagus. And my final commission of this last batch was also, luckily enough, one of my all-time favorite Pokemon, Toxtricity. When the client first contacted me in requesting this Pokemon, I was ecstatic, and I already had a ton of ideas in my head. But this client had a very, very specific direction that they wanted to take this character in, and provided me with all sorts of reference images and genres of fashion that I had never heard of. It was a little overwhelming at first, but one image in particular caught my attention. Looking at the references all together, it took me a while to come up with a way that I could cohesively combine them into one design, but I worked backwards from the references into one coherent look. Obviously, I wanted to take into consideration the inspiration for Toxtricity's designs, hardcore British punk rockers. The nice thing about a genre like punk rock is that there's really no rules when it comes to fashion. I mean, obviously you got your mohawks and your leather jackets, but if someone rolled up to the party in a segmented helmet with 2 feather crowns, I doubt they'd be thrown out. The design that I was concocting ended up looking like something out of Mad Max, which kind of worked perfectly as a middle ground between my vision for the design and the client's. I leaned into this post-apocalyptic sci-fi aesthetic, and halfway into rendering I decided that the character needed some sort of weapon to add a little bit more flair to the design. With G-Max Toxtricity's massive electric guitar in mind, I designed a futuristic rifle with a stock that resembled the body of a punk rocker's electric guitar. Slung over the shoulder, the silhouette could imply the most hardcore soloist of the 80s, or a Fallout Wasteland raider. I had sort of accidentally stumbled upon the perfect design in the most chaotic of ways, which I thought was very appropriate for this character. I was really happy with my work for all 3 of these designs, but my clear favorite was Kapha Grivas. Which one did you like best? Let me know down in the comments. I plan on making another video soon about designing armored characters in general and how to properly utilize reference to create believable and interesting designs. Would that be something you guys would be interested in seeing? Let me know, but for now, I'm signing off. Peace, and I'll see you all in the next video.